ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa says the huge loss in electoral support in KwaZulu-Natal, the party will rebuild itself. Ramaphosa is leading a visit by the ANC's National Working Committee to the province. The two-day engagement is aimed at assessing the state of the province post the election. The ANC lost its majority in the general election. It obtained just over 17% of the vote. The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal faced an uphill battle ahead of the election. Challenges ranged from service delivery, dysfunctional municipalities and a decline in support. The formation of former President Zuma's Umkhonto party was a huge factor in the drop in support. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa says after a proper analysis, they will formulate a strategy on the way forward. He says the party needs to strengthen its structures to enable it to improve its capacity in government.
Our visit here as the NWC is to go to all the 11 regions of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, and it's part of the process of the ANC to interface with our structures so as to enable us to get our membership to do a proper analysis of our performance in the elections. As we've often said, these elections were a setback for the ANC. We declined massively, particularly here in KZN. We still have a live organization here, and our objective in coming here is to talk to the leadership of the ANC, both at provincial level, at regional level, as well as at branch level. And that's precisely what we are doing. It is a whole effort of doing a proper analysis and review so that the ANC can be renewed and strengthened. It is only when we have a renewed and strong ANC that we will be able to execute our tasks that are encoded in our manifesto, which manifesto in large measure is also part of the statement of intent that we have had a number of parties embracing, working together with us in the setting up of the government of national unity.
All right, weighing on this now, we're joined by political analyst Dr. Imraan Buccus, and he joins us now via our video link. Dr. Imraan, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. I mean, we saw ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa with the ANC's NWC making its way to KZN, and one would say, just listening to that soundbite there from the president saying that they are there to do a proper analysis. What do you make of the ANC's visit to KwaZulu-Natal?
Well, I guess the starting point would be to say that, KZN is the heart of the ANC in many ways. I think this province holds great significance for the ANC, even from the early years. The founders, Pixley Kaseme and Dube, hailed from this province. And I think it might be significant to add that they led that kind of African nationalism response in 1912 to the white nationalism that we saw in 1910. And of course, we know since 94, this is the province that Mandela chose to vote at in 94. And it's also a province that held huge successes, particularly during the time of former President Zuma. But we also know in recent times that the ANC has been pushed to the periphery, I think, in a very dramatic way. So, like nationally in KZN, it has a really sophisticated policy framework, legislative framework, but I think what has been clear for all to see that implementation has been lacking, despite all of the sophisticated policy frameworks that we have. And, local government and to a lesser extent provincial government are central pivots in society building exercises. But when we think about KZN, for example, what catches the news the most is infighting, it's news of corruption. It's not about program implementation.
Yeah.
And I think that's been sorely lacking, particularly in KZN.
And of course, as the ANC makes its way there, they are saying that, they are there to, renew itself and also review, the state of the ANC in that province. And one would also ask, where does the ANC even begin? I mean, you've lauded and said that, when it comes to the ANC stronghold, it is really, KZN is the heart of the ANC. So where does it begin to correct its wrongs, particularly when you look at the 2024 elections, where it slipped from just dominating the party or the province to being the third party now?
Yeah, I think the focus needs to be on renewal. It needs to be on pulling together. It needs to be at the political level, focused on how do you drive programs. I think the problem we've had in KZN, if I, might suggest, is also an arrogance of leadership. We've had a very technocratic approach to governance in this province. We've also had a disconnect between stakeholders at provincial government, at local government, and people. People's voices. We talk about participatory democracy, public participation, hearing people's voices in terms of what they want around governance, but that certainly has not been meaningful. And, this province, despite the deficits we've had with previous premiers like Senzo Mchunu, Sibundebele, Zweli Mkhize, but I think despite the problems we had even during their leadership, you had a more kind of strategic approach to leadership. You had a more informed, embracing, encompassing perspective to leadership. And I think we've seen a huge gap from that era of premiership and leadership to what we have today in the KZN ANC.
And talking about leadership, I mean, when it comes to the 2024 results, particularly in KZN, it has shown that it really does have its loyalty to former President Jacob Zuma. So how does the ANC begin to maneuver itself, particularly where you have its former president who has formed a party with a stronghold in KwaZulu-Natal and now bringing on board the former EFF's deputy president?
Yeah, I think, there's no doubt that MK has reconfigured politics in KZN. I think there was a huge underestimation of what MK would bring electorally, and not many people would have expected 45%. So I think no doubt Zuma continues to resonate with masses of people, and, the reasons for that have been spelled out already many times. But I think what the problem with the MK leadership in KZN, again, is, we're not seeing programs. What we're overwhelmed with is infighting, it's the talk of positions, it's people being removed from power. And I think more worryingly, we're seeing the integration of politics and gangsterism. This idea that the MK is somehow left-wing, I think is far, far from the truth. MK seems to be more a collection of corrupt, disgruntled individuals. But no doubt, despite that, they pose a great threat to the ANC, I think, as we approach 2026. Although the counter-argument might be, people that supported MK are disillusioned. They got 45% of the vote. We're not seeing anything meaningful coming out of them. But I know with some of the recent defections from the EFF, there's much talk about what that could do for strategy, for policy, for an ideological framing for the MK party. But I think it's early days to speculate on whether people like Shivambu would make a huge difference in that regard.
And touching on 2026, I mean, in 2 years' time, we head to the local government elections. And one would say, well, when we draw back and look at the performance of the ANC in 2021 and the local government elections then, I mean, they also then lost a number of municipalities in KZN. Is it possible for the party to claw back that support as it begins the groundwork now, consulting with its structures as we head to the local government elections?
Well, one is, I'd say, no doubt the ANC is arguably the most sophisticated liberation movement on the, former liberation movement on the African continent. Its power to organize, its electoral machinery, all of that is really sophisticated. And, who knows what the ANC could do between now and 2026. But the other point to take into account is that there's a really important lesson that history teaches us, is that liberation movements in power, once they get pushed to the periphery, nationally, provincially, there's seldom this chance for them to recover. And I think what we often see is that they get pushed further to the periphery, and we start to see the party disintegrate further. We already have COPE, MK, EFF. We're likely to see multiple other parties emerge from the ANC as we go forward, like has been the case in Zambia and multiple other countries in Africa. So I think to answer your question, what do we expect in 2026? I'd say with the unemployment growing, with the service delivery deficits growing, with people being increasingly disillusioned, I think we are likely to see more losses in the ANC than recovery.
All right, Dr. Imraan, thank you so much for your time this evening and for your analysis. That is Dr. Imraan Buccus. He is a political analyst, just giving us there his insight in terms of the ANC's NWC making its way to KwaZulu-Natal.